Sansa and Daenerys being married off as literal children is neither good nor normal within the context of the story, and I need people to really understand that. In fact, the inclusion of child marriages is meant to show how children are being politically and physically abused due to the context of these petty political squabbles and wars. It is not the norm in the way that they are intending these marriages to go within the story. Now, if you're listening to me say this and you're like, well, yes, Ronnie, also the sky is blue, and when you breathe, you get to keep living. I would be like, yeah, no, I get it. It sounds stupid when I have to say it this bluntly, but there are people, really dumb people, who say things in my comments, and they make my blood boil. And so I have to now sit here and explain why this is not a fucking thing. So let's dispel some false information and really contextualize like how these marriages fit in, not only within the story and what the story is trying to, explain, but within the historical context of maybe the time periods that we're kind of basing things off of. So first, we hear the stupid ass fucking argument of, well, back then this is just what happened. First of all, no, okay? Two things. One, back then, this show, these books, dragons. They have dragons. There is no back then. There is no back then with us and dragons, okay? So maybe stop using the fantasy series to like okay the weird exploitation of children, especially young women, by who I am sure is just another dumbass fucking dude in my comments, but I will digress. Number two, I think what you actually mean to say when you pull up this dumbass fucking argument is, oh, well, back then in the context of the time period that the books and the TV series are based off of. Okay, sure, you that's what you're referencing. Cool, but you're also fucking wrong and talking out of your ass because, again, that was not normal. And you claiming that it is and claiming that like, oh, this is just like how it was, shows that you actually do not know anything and you are talking with a degree of confidence that does not, befit the dumb fuckery that is spilling out of your mouth at this moment. Now, what we can factually establish is back in the medieval period of the late 15th century, which is when the War of the Roses was going on, that is the period in which the books are primarily pulling from. So, if we look around there, the standard is not what the intention was for both of these kids. Again, I say kids because remember, these children were married off at 12 and 13. Now, in the late 15th century, the age of majority, being an adult, was not altogether different than what it is now. It kind of vacillates 16 to 18-ish. That is the normal time in which I am kind of an adult now. I'm kind of getting married. I'm kind of doing those things. Now, there is a slight difference for the nobility. So the nobility, because they use marriages as like political tools, as ways of like reinforcing claims and making their political position stronger, they sometimes would marry at a younger age. However, what was not normal and what was not considered okay was consummating these marriages at this young of an age, which is what was the intention with both Sansa and Daenerys when they were married off. They were married off specifically, explicitly, with the intent to consummate these marriages as quickly as possible, despite the fact that these children are 12 and 13. And how do we know that this is like considered a bad thing? Because it did not happen very often. Again, as I said earlier, while the nobility would get married off sometimes at young ages as a way of, like making political moves, the consummation of these marriages did not take place until these children were older, like teenagers or like getting close to the age of majority. Now, the commentary that is being made here is to show how, within the context of these current political squabbles, children are being abused. Because children are also victims of war. They are also victims of the political machinations of the adults around them. And hey, wouldn't you know, that's one of the whole fucking themes of the series. How all of these children, which is why George has so many child POVs and important children characters, how these children are abused and damaged by war, both directly, both physically, and then like indirectly. Whether you're, Daenerys, who is being forced into a marriage with a literal adult while she is 13 and forced to get pregnant, or you're Arya, who is like now on her own and fighting, even though, again, she's like 9 9 at this point. Jon Snow is forced to be in this like adult style like leadership position at like 15, 16. He's a kid. He shouldn't be doing that. That's insane. Same with Robb. Robb has been made king of the North at 15. Do you think a child is ready for that? A child is ready for that amount of responsibility? No. The point of this series is that children get abused in these systems and why that is bad. And so another way of showing that is specifically showing how women are abused, how women are treated like they do not matter beyond the fact that they're literal breeding stock to these disgusting like political matchmakers who are trying to literally just use them as a means of making a baby that then has a political claim to a thing that they want control over. And that is the point of these marriages here. We do have historical context for occasionally, young children who were put in these marriages being abused in the sense that they were forced to consummate the marriage far too young. And in the historical context, it's a bad thing. It's a horrific thing. The big reference that you can look at when considering these political marriages is Margaret Beaufort. Margaret Beaufort was a young noble girl who at the age of 12 was married off to a much older, another noble. I believe he was 24, and he was Edmund. He was the younger brother, or I think half brother, of the current King of England at the time. And at the time, they really wanted to marry Margaret Beaufort specifically because she was the sole heir to another line directly, leading from the throne. So she had a claim to the throne herself, and then her children would through a particular bloodline. And because this is the War of the Roses, they are looking at okay, who are all the players that have the claims, and let's see if we can, make a baby that has the strongest claim. And then if I control the baby, I then can, control the direction that the country goes, control power, etc., etc. Again, if you haven't gotten it already, Game of Thrones is literally the War of the Roses with dragons. And so, in real life, what happened to poor Margaret Beaufort is because they were obsessed with basically using her as breeding stock, using her to create a baby with a stronger claim, using her claim, and then the claim of the husband that she was being pawned off to. The marriage was consummated when she was 12, and she gave birth at 13 to her only child, Henry Tudor. Now, this worked in the context of the political machinations. Henry Tudor was eventually the compromise king, if you will. I mean, not everyone was cool with it, but he eventually ascended the throne, became the king because he had, of the options, one of the better claims. All because his mother and his father, both had the individual claims of their own. But again, in the context of the historical record, this was looked at as a horrifying thing. The fact that Margaret Beaufort was forced to consummate a marriage at 12 to then give birth to a child at 13 was not a good thing and had lasting effects for this poor woman. Despite the fact that after her first marriage, where she had Henry Tudor with Edmund, whatever his name was, he passes away very quickly. She gets married 2 more times during her lifetime and never has another child again. Most likely because she wasn't physically capable of it, because she had a child so young and it literally fucked her up. So no, I don't want to hear any more bullshit about oh hell, this was just normal. It fucking wasn't. And when it did happen, it was considered horrifying and seen for what it was. A cheap attempt at abusing a child to get politically ahead. It wasn't normal, it wasn't okay, and the fact that both of these children were married off with the intent to consummate, luckily Tyrion doesn't do it, but poor Daenerys does, they have to live with that. Even Daenerys, going forward, has been told that she will not be able to bear another child. And, while we can, look at it in the context of the magic and everything, if we just look at it in the fact that, oh, you were a 13-year-old that, got pregnant and then lost a child, that's enough right there. So please, let's think before we start talking out of our asses about things that we don't know and claiming oh, that's just how stuff was. No, it wasn't. Both because this is the story about fucking dragons, and even the real world thing that they might be referencing, you don't know it well enough to cite it, so shut the fuck up. Anyway, yeah, so this is a great way to rouse me into making a video. So if there's any other people who want to make dumb comments that you want me to make a video in response to, please do so. Or say something nice. I'd like to respond to something nice next time. That would be lovely. Anyway, y'all are cool. Hope you have a good night. Goodbye now.